perception in today's society, and Oscar is going to dive in and dissect the reality of being a first gen. Join Oscar and his guests from all walks of life, discussing their trial and tribulations in today's America. Now your host, Oscar Villacis.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of First Gen American. I'm your host, Oscar Villacis. A quick shout out to our sponsors, Boomer Graphics and Sign. Boomer Graphics and Signs located right here in Nashua, New Hampshire. Awesome to have them here. And for the young entrepreneurs in the making, if you're looking for decals, apparel, stickers, you name it, they have it or they'll create it. And a big shout out to the team, Ben, Bree, and Jerry. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for the love and support. And, of course, Rivera Nayarit, located in 116 West Pearl Street, right here in Nashua, New Hampshire. A different Mexican cuisine, something a little bit from the coast and something a little bit from the land. Really, really great. Also, if you're looking for an event where you're looking for a gathering or a company event, less than 30 people or 30 people plus, it all depends. They're available. They have a little function room in the back. They'll be able to cater and give you a great ambiance to give you a good time. And a special shout out to Fabiola. Sapopan. Sapopan is providing all the international snacks and seasonings and meats that you can, sometimes we like to go to Lawrence or Boston to find our traditions that are shipped in from South America or Central America, but no, you actually can get them here in Nashua. So check out Sapopan. Shout out Fabiola for always showing us love and keeping us moving forward. Shout out to these wonderful entrepreneurs. And thank you. We love your support. And 603 Diversity. If you haven't checked out, we are on the cover of 603 Diversity. What an honor to be able to, move forward and inspire the community, inspire other individuals that are in the same boat as us, but now in the land of opportunity, achieving that American dream. So here, First Gen American, who do we have? We have Jackie Figueroa. Jackie Figueroa is a young entrepreneur in the making, a mother, Mexican descent, and a realtor, moving and shaking and buying our communities back to stable the next generation. She also has children herself, and she has an amazing story, and we are honored to have you. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you so much for having me, Oscar. Such a pleasure.
I love when people reach out and they just say proudly now, hey, I'm a first gen too. I love what you're doing. And I'm like, all right, let's chat. So Here we are. I saw a little bit about your background and we were chatting. So Mexican descent, first generation American,
Right.
Both parents. What part of Mexico?
Colima?
Yes.
Yes. So right off in the western hemisphere.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's a couple of family members from Colima here.
A lot.
A lot. and what part of Mexico is Colima in?
It's on the western.
Yeah.
So right where Mexico starts to point and to curve. It's a really small state. But everyone falls in love with Nashua and migrates here. A lot of people.
And Colima, is that more desert or more coast?
Coast,
yeah.
Yes.
Must be beautiful.
Yes. We're from a small little ranch.
Yeah.
So it's very stuck in the 60s.
Okay.
Running water's not the best sometimes. If you have the money, then you'll have running water, heated water on top of that.
Yeah, but it's so hot over there. You don't need it though.
Yeah, but there's still days where our fall is there cold.
Yeah, what's the temperature in the fall? Like
Low
40,
50s. 50, yeah.
Yeah, low 50s.
Nothing bad. It's like our spring.
I see. I have friends that live in that are from Colima that their parents go back, and I tell you, something that I appreciate the most is not having cell service.
Oh yeah.
It's just that disconnection.
No internet.
Just going back to the motherland and just hearing the birds,
the animals,
chirp,
free range chickens,
and then you're just swinging back.
My kids loved it. I took my kids for the first time last year.
Yeah.
And they loved it.
No tablets.
No tablets.
No,
maybe a little bit because my dad does have Wi-Fi.
No Coco Lemon.
No, but authentic, cuisine, organic.
Yeah.
Because everyone has their own produce. They grow their own produce. They have their own animals to butcher if they wanted meat. So it's, definitely different, but the food is so much good.
Yeah, I mean, it's organic. And you actually, something that I appreciated from my grandmother's house, she had a mango tree. Well, she still has a mango tree in front of her house. And just being able to pick the mango. Usually when I go in the summertime, it's ripe, it's ready to go. So I'm just picking them and cutting them up. And you don't appreciate that.
No.
And here we are, we're like, oh, does this bodega have mangoes? So they do. Or what I'm trying to look for is the Dominican canepas. I can't find them anywhere. I've been trying to look for them. Tell me something that you appreciate that you remember growing up when your parents used to go back to visit.
Never.
Never?
No.
You never went back to go visit?
I went for the first time. I was already like 17 years old though.
Really?
Yeah, I never did it as a child.
And what was that culture shock look like to you?
To me, I guess it was kind of difficult in a sense because I had, family members or friends or the people that are around me that, were the same ethnic background. They have already gone like 20 times. Right. They go once a year.
They know
kind
the
of
routine.
Thing. And I'm like, I've never been like, I can't relate.
Yeah.
So not ever being like able to relate was like hard because it's like, because you feel kind of like left out in a way.
Right.
But I did take it upon myself, like, when I was in high school. I'm like, I really want to go. Like, I'm old enough. Like, I don't need an adult to go with me on an airplane at that point. We did live in a couple years growing up in California. So, where here you don't see that much diversity, like, just out in the open. Out in California, like, a lot of diversity.
Right.
So, I just, like, fell in love with it, which made me push to, like, I want to go.
And you were born and raised in California, or?
I was born there, but I was raised in Nashua my whole life.
What part of California?
I was born in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And then came here because I had some medical issues as an infant, which is why we settled here in Nashua because I had to go to the Children's Hospital in Boston.
Yeah. What was that like going back at 17? Because I can't imagine like at that time. Technology isn't like it is today. Like you have family members that can't even get running water, have WhatsApp and internet and know your life before you even know it, and kind of just connecting but before they had this perception of you, and that perception made it harder to connect because they made it seem like you're a little standoffish, but you just don't have anything in common. Right.
Yeah, like I'd hear comments like, "Oh, eres fresa."
What's that mean?
Like, "Oh, like you're preppy, like you're too good."
Oh,
because you're,
man.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I'm sorry, like it's just not the same upbringing. Like, I'm just accustomed to this lifestyle here that I've, accustomed to here, and it's not the same out there. So, even just like dancing, they're like, "Oh, you don't know how to dance." I'm like, I do, but they're like, no, I can tell you don't, because like you don't dance like we do.
No, you don't move. You don't move. To this day, I can't move my hips. I can't. Stop it, Shakira. No, to this day, I can't move my hips. But I, something that I remember,
or like my pronunciation. Speaking Spanish.
Have you heard our Latinos in Vivo episode? Me and Jasmine butcher this show up. I don't know.
Yeah.
We try our best.
Like Spanglish is as close as I'm gonna get. Like,
I was talking to a friend that's from Mexican descent, and they said that depending on where in Mexico, there's a lot of Spanglish words that are mixed in, and that they've just been assimilated. That's what it is. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll probably say it later on in the show, but I can't remember for the life of me. Now. Growing up, right? That must have been a lot of pressure for your parents, having an infant with, health conditions, and to being able not have that flexibility, but that flight or fight mode, to survive, to stay here, and to have that opportunity for you to get that medical help. How was that transition like moving from California? Because even in the West Coast, like Latinos over there, their whole culture, I think we have a more stability staple over there because it's everywhere. It's in the streets.
Right.
I mean, we look outside.
The grand population.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We look outside National New Hampshire, and I'm like, we have to find those hidden gems for our community.
Right.
How did that feel moving over here?
So to start off with, like my parents like told me at like a very young age like what the situation was, you know. My mom had me at a very young age. I think she was like 16 or 17 years old. And she told me, she's like, you know, I came to this country, I was pregnant with you.
Wow. When she said that.
So I'm like, wow. Like, and when I hear things on the news or articles like, oh, anchor babies and stuff like that, I'm like, that's me though. And because, you know, if she didn't make that decision, I would have been born in Mexico.
Yeah.
You know?
You don't think
and just that status alone changes everything. You know? I don't know if you've ever watched, it's on Netflix. It's called, oh my God, Next Generation or something like that. But like, they're all from different parts of the world. Right. Similar struggles, and they come to this country. And I just like related so much to it. And it does bring me to tears, like when I watch stuff like that, because it's like, oh my God, you know, you watch the opposite. You know, people against it,
right?
Talking about anchor babies and stuff like that, and I'm like, but that's me though.
Yeah.
You know, and just like, you know, just stay quiet, stay under the radar. Mm-hmm. You know, don't cause a scene, because if they come back and then, you know, my parents were the adults, like, we don't want anything that could jeopardize. Which is scary to me too, because it's like, as a child, like I said, never went to Mexico.
Yeah.
What am I going to do in a country that I'm not familiar with? That I don't even know who's out there. Like, I didn't meet my family members that lived out there until I was 18, 17. Like, a whole total life reset. And I'm like, so that's just how, you know, life went on. And, you know, my dad told me that, you know, the couple of times he came up in his early teens, he was a farmer, you know, in California, working out in the fields. And I'm just like, wow. Yeah. He's like, yeah, we did that so you're born here. He's like, that's a privilege all on its own.
Yeah.
He's like, because you're not going to have to struggle the same way we did. Mm-hmm.
That's powerful. You hear about individuals growing up, you know, their families being out in the fields getting paid, what, 30 cents, 75 cents an hour?
Yeah.
Nothing. When you hear that, we came to this country so you don't struggle, but they don't understand that the struggle might be something that they're not used to. Mm-hmm. The struggle for them was physical. The struggle for us is mental. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
How do you take that and feel it with pride, but then feel paralyzed at the same time? And how do you push through that?
Right. So, like, as a child, you know, being the firstborn and everything, you know, translating documents at such a young age, like, I don't even know
what those documents meant.
Right. And I'm just like, word for word, I'm like, oh, this is like this.
What does that? Pero mija, what does that mean?
Exactly.
I don't know what it means.
And always like translating and stuff like that, and I'm just like, wow, that's a lot of pressure for a child to go through. And if you didn't do it right, it's like, well, isn't that why you go to school? Don't they teach you English? I'm like, they don't teach you how to speak English. Right. I'm like, they just assume that they do, and that's, you know, how to write and how to read, but they don't teach you how to speak it. I'm like, it's not the same.
Or, hey, mom, dad, my educational level right now is the same educational that you had back home when you left.
Right. And I did struggle. I was in ESL up until like the 7th grade. Because of the, you know, it's just a big confusion between both languages and trying to juggle it all, you know. Mm-hmm. And it took me up until when I moved to California, when they tested me, like an ESL test to get enrolled into school, that they're like, oh, you're good. Because there's much more other children out there that, you know,
the system,
of that culture.
The demographic, yeah.
The demographic itself, that really needed it more than I did.
Right.
And I'm like, see, I really didn't ever need it. I knew I didn't need it, but, you know, the school was just like, no, you need it because your parents speak a different language.
Yeah.
Not to confuse you. And I'm like, oh. But, you know, that's just a lot of pressure on its own.
A lot of...
and a lot of machismo.
That's what I was about to say.
And I'm the only female out of two brothers. Yes. And the oldest. So I'm just like, oh my God. Like, they're like, nope, can't go out. Can't.
Jasmine's like, but she hasn't made. But she hasn't made. She's the little run of the family. That's why she hasn't made. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like just different. Like what my upbringing was versus like my brother. It was just so different. They're like, no, you can't go out with your friends after a certain time, after school. You have to cook, you have to clean. And then, the boys got to do whatever they wanted. Come back home whenever they wanted.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, it's not fair, but it's just, and I'm not to bash anyone or my parents, but it's like, I understand now that as an adult, like they always say, like, you're never going to understand until you have your own kids.
Oh, no. Listen,
So now I kind of understand, though, because, like, even, like, psychologically, I'm like, well, they only did as best as they could as what they know.
Yeah. Listen, I don't want to make this the battle of the sexes for now, but the guys have it bad, too. The guys have it tough.
Yeah.
Because you got to, hey, doesn't matter what you're going through. Suppress that feeling, boy.
Mm-hmm.
That's not mental health.
No.
Eso inquietud. Suppress that.
Yeah.
You have to provide for your family. You have to put food on the table.
Yeah.
There's no time for sickness. There's no time for stress.
Right.
Anxiety, kid, that's called laziness. Push through.
Right.
You're privileged to be here.
You're overreacting.
Yeah, you're overreacting.
Stop being so dramatic.
So I get it. It's hard for the women too because you have to, you have to maintain the house and like.
Yeah.
I had to reset a lot of my mentalities on how I viewed a woman based on what my male figures saw a woman as.
Yeah.
No, you do this, I do that.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
When you can do that,
right,
I will do it for you, vice versa. I want to show you, not because I see a lot of women from the first generation, their husbands, God forbid, they pass away. They're stuck.
Yeah, they're not self-sufficient.
They're not self-sufficient. They don't know how to change a light bulb.
Yeah.
You know what I teach my wife? Hey, honey, the garage door is not working. It's not shutting. Come over here. Let me show you. Mm-hmm. This goes like this.
Right.
Push this.
Right.
Do this.
Yeah.
Let me show you that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a struggle, beyond just our culture alone.
I'm trying to break that machismo. I'm like, enough.
Yeah.
Enough with that.
I used to work in banking before I got into real estate, and
dun, 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 dun.
I would get elderly women crying in my office because they're like, my husband passed away. He took care of the finances.
Oof.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, it's going to take me like 2 hours because you have a lot obviously going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like a therapist too.
Yeah.
On top of that, I'm like, well, you need to learn your finances. I'm like, that is so important on your own. Like this whole time you've been married to your spouse, you just let them do everything, which is fine to an extent, but to like have someone completely take over everything and then they're gone and like you have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
And to learn something new sometimes can be very challenging at certain points of your life,
Come on up, Jasmine. Come on up. My little sister. Not the run. Not the run. I was just joking earlier. She turned bright red. Not the run, but she's the powerhouse, What, like, you both have daughters.
Yeah.
First generation, you both have daughters. What are you trying to teach your daughters in situations like this? Like that, God forbid, dad shoveled the driveway or, fix this, fix that, the furnace, whatever the whole situation is, change the tire. Like, what are you trying to instill in your daughters moving forward for the next generation? Because it's important. It starts here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. You can go first. The guest can answer that.
The guest first?
Being independent.
Yeah. What does that mean?
Huge.
What does that mean for us as first gens? Independent.
Being independent, being financially being able to provide for yourself and not depend on the opposite sex or your partner.
Mm-hmm.
To speak your feelings not to suppress them, because I feel like that's so important. Like, if you have to cry, cry.
Hold space for them.
And please believe, for men too.
Yes.
For men too. Like, it's not enough with that barrier of that cowardness. We're trying to suppress something. You know what happens?
Men
Suicide.
have the highest. Yes.
Suicide.
Say that. Mm-hmm.
Suicide happens.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You know, like
just the news last week, Miss USA.
Yeah.
She committed suicide, and she's beautiful. Everyone would say, "Oh, she looks beautiful," though. It doesn't matter if you're beautiful or you know.
Or you think
still be
you have it
with a lot
made,
inside.
you know, it's that perception of like having it made, and you don't know what that person's struggling with. Yeah, but I take the role on of like teaching my husband how to take care of my daughter, because I come from like where my mom passed away when I was young, and my dad had to take over, you know, taking care of us, and so I know he struggled having to take care of us. So I make it a point with my husband to teach him to make sure that he can also do my daughter's hair, you know, that he can also pick out her clothes and get her dressed and, you know, do all the things that aren't typically like women did, you know what I mean? Like, and my dad, you know, he has that machismo sometimes too, and that like where his wife does a majority of that stuff, but you know, it's something that I choose to break with my husband so that my daughter has a good example of, you know, choosing a partner that also participates in the child caring and, you know, the housework. And she can see two parents, you know, doing this, you know, same things, that we both can do it. And that means that she can find a partner who can also do those things as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing,
sure.
Jess. Yeah. I battle with this a lot. You know, I battle with the disconnect of not connecting yet with the new me and learning everything that I've learned to unlearn. Right?
You have to face your past, for sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like, dealing with that machismo and that guard. That guard that constantly was instilled by my parents.
Yeah.
That distrust. Distrust in... It could be internal, it could be external.
Right.
Right? And just seeing, like, I might have some positive male role models now, but growing up, what I thought was funny, or what I thought the adults would have seen funny, was a disservice to my youth. And the reason why is because there's a lot of moments where I thought that some things that were okay are completely not.
Yeah. Normalizing it.
Normalizing
repeating
it.
Cycles.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
That's hard.
And one thing that I talk about is the connection within my dad's side of the family and my mom's side of the family. And my mom comes from like an African background. So we're a little darker skinned on my mom's side. On my dad's side, you have like a lighter skin, green eyes, white assimilating, Italian, Eastern European, or Western European side, right? And I tried to, you know, that we were talking about this earlier, about the disconnect about our skin color internally, you know, and how we're so ignorant to being able to speak about prejudice within our own families and how that's toxic
Very.
for our children.
Yeah.
And, you know,
it just builds huge insecurities.
And you know what? I don't have a kid yet. But my family keeps going, oh my God, the baby would be so beautiful if she had just a little bit of your skin color and your wife's eyes. Oh my God. It's like that microaggression, that autopilot that we're instilled into. Be lighter, be accepted.
Yeah. I've had family members, you know, tell me, they're like, oh, well, when you get married, marry a white guy.
Yo.
Like, don't marry anyone that's darker.
And
listen, I'm just like, what does that even matter? Like, love is love. Like, you can't control that.
Jasmine feels attacked. She did it out of love. She did it out of love.
And I'm just like, that is crazy. Like, I've had a family member, not like close, but distant family member. He's like, oh, es que tienes que mejorar la raza.
What?
And I'm just like,
let me translate. Oh, and you got to better the culture. The race. You got to better the race.
And I'm just
That's
like,
crazy.
And it's sad because it's like my male cousins are now, they have that in their head now, you know. Oh, because my dad told us, you know, marry someone of lighter skin tone or more, not even your same culture, just Caucasian. I'm just like, what difference does that make?
What did you tell them?
Exactly that. I'm like, what difference does that make? I'm like, you can't control love. If you fall in love with someone, you do it because of who they are, not their skin tone, complexion.
I promise we go through the same thing. I think that the simulations are coming because I went through the same thing as a teenager. I went back to the motherland, to South America. I had a summer crush. She was darker, beautiful, you know. And I'll never forget the day I was young. I was like 13. She's like, I'm going to marry that girl one day and bring her back to the United States. And then they go, no, you can't. We didn't leave this all behind for you to bring some. What? What are you saying? This is home. Yeah. No. This was once home. We're moving forward. You are the future. The future's over there. I was like, we don't forget. Don't get me wrong. We don't forget where we came from.
Right.
That's why we're back here. But this is not our future. And one day, you're going to marry a nice white girl. Right? And you're going to come back here with the grandchildren. And you're going to be playing, and that is the future. And I'm saying to myself, is this a vision of the future that you want me to portray, or the future that is really instilled for me that I want to choose? Because there's two scenarios, there's two visions of life. There's ones that they envision themselves when they say, I'm too old, I can't do this. I'm here though. Good luck, kids. Move us forward.
Right. The pressure's on.
But hey, do it this way. I think that you should do this. And I'm thinking to myself, because at one point, I even think about this as like the future, you know, God, when one day when God grants us a child, the future is like me pushing my kid and saying, hey, I'm too old for that. You hear it, right? You hear it from your parents. I'm too old for that, but you have the opportunity and you need to do this. And I'm saying to myself, are you projecting what you wanted to do? And you're pushing that on me? No different than when our parents goes, oh, you should be a lawyer. They make a lot of money. Or a doctor.
Right.
You know? Yeah. Or a politician.
Just get a safe job. Nothing risky.
What I say is, the way you get educated is by getting involved. See how it moves and shakes. Yeah. Learn.
You have to try.
Yeah. Right? If it's for you, it's for you. If it's not, there's something. At least you tried. Exactly, because there's something that you internally can see that I couldn't see because of the outside looking in. But once you're in and you're investigating internally on something that it might not be for you.
Right.
And how many kids in our position as first-generation Americans are living a life that was dictated by their parents and they're miserable? 3, 4, 5 degrees in debt, not running those careers. Yeah. Miserable. You know what happens? They project that onto their kids. And those kids are miserable.
That resentment.
And they resentment. You did this to me. Right?
Right. But even then, you know, the lack of communication.
Right.
That's, I think, so big. And knowing how to communicate.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, their first, you know, tuition is just to yell or scream. And a child doesn't understand that. Like, they're like, son consejos. It's advice. It's like, but you're saying it, you're yelling at me, though. Like, how is that advice? you know, and you internalize that.
I do it out of love.
As a first generation, like, you always want to make your parents proud, so you're just always like a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Because you just want to make them proud.
Right.
You know what they came to this country and struggled, all that, you know, all those obstacles that they had overcome to give us this life. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't be a burden.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to do what they tell me to do.
You know, going back to what you said, the people pleasers.
Yeah.
We're always people pleasers and apologetic for nothing that we had nothing to do with. We didn't do anything wrong.
No.
But we always feel like we're in the wrong. Mm-hmm. Whether it's in a room that we go into where it's intimidating, where we feel like we don't belong. And we say this all the time, imposter syndrome, right? Where we go in and it's just like, it feels like that disconnect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It just causes so much damage.
Yeah.
Down the road. And I think it gets even worse when you're a teenager.
Right.
And you see all these other kids, you know, doing things and stuff like that, and you don't get to experience those things because you don't have the support or anything like that. So it just makes you feel some type of way.
Right. And
then you internalize it. And then we're always just taught to stay under the radar. So you just stay quiet about it. So you learn to just suppress it.
Yeah.
And keep going. And just, on the outside, just like nothing, you know? You're fine, you're normal. Until one day you can't take it anymore and just break down.
Yeah.
But that's not healthy.
No, or you become the aggressor. Yeah,
right.
That person's too aggressive. Mm-hmm. God forbid if you say something that how you feel.
Exactly.
And it comes out of context or tone.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden just, whoa, she's
it took me up until now that I'm an adult to finally, like, set boundaries with family and friends. I'm like, this is it. I can't please anyone anymore. I'm doing this for me. And, you know, moving forward for my children, I'm like, I can't. I'm like, this is not doing me any good. You know? But it took me up until, 20 years later, you know? So it's been a challenge, and I'm not going to deny it. I'm still working on it. Because, you know, you have moments where if someone says something, like I have moments myself where if someone says something to me, and if I'm not in the right mindset, it's like, damn, like that reminds me of something that happened to me in my childhood. You know, it's kind of like, I don't want to compare it to PTSD in a way, but it triggers you to go back to that moment, and those feelings come up again because you didn't confront those feelings.
Wow.
You know? So, and I feel like that a lot of people struggle with that, but they don't know who to talk to.
Right.
Or resources. You know, just having someone to speak to is just so important.
Right.
And I think, you know, New Hampshire, it's more like Nashua and Manchester are obviously majority, a lot of
the BIPOC community.
Yes, more demographic, you know, diversity here. But you still have that struggle with people in our community, like so afraid, because they don't want to be recognized. Sometimes, you know, they just want to work, go home, and repeat. But they're struggling internally, you know.
Suffering.
Yes.
Suffering in silence.
Yeah.
What was the conversation that you had with your husband having having your children, and potentially them being in a situation where they're not fully validated or they're not fully accepted? How are those conversations looking like for your children to prepare them for situations where you're gonna be the most overqualified individual in the room, but least recognized?
Knowing their value, their self-worth. To me, for my girls, or if I had boys too, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think that's so important regardless of their skin tone, their background, anything. I'm like, you stand your ground and know your value. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. And just be kind. Because you don't know what other people are going through. So just simply be kind. You know, and obviously if you have to defend yourself respectfully.
Yeah.
But just be kind because you don't know what the next person's battling, you know, internally.
Wow. That's important too, because we see a lot of kids that are, a lot of parents that just don't know how to approach the kids, that just kind of let them live their life, you know, and then all of a sudden in situations where they're dealing with so much internally as first gens that they have a disconnection with the next generation, right? And I think it's important to kind of, in a way, let them understand that what they're feeling, or maybe that struggle, that internal struggle, that it's okay.
Right.
It's
that
okay.
Whatever they're feeling is valid.
Right. What is, you know, having that conversation with your husband, and being two Hispanics in this community, you know, what's the educational system look like, and what are some of the values that you had growing up that you want to instill in your children, and how our job isn't to lose our identity, right? Not to lose the culture. How do you keep that alive?
I think it's just like basic, you know, the music, of course, is so big for me. I love the music. The food, you know, still being, my kids speak primarily English, but they do get curious. They're like, well, how do you say this in Spanish? So it's not like they're completely disregarding the language at all. I just don't want them to go through that confusion of having to juggle both, where they can't even like my youngest is in pre-K, and her teacher told me she was struggling with recognizing the alphabet. I'm like, if she's struggling in English, like, why am I going to pressure her to do it in Spanish?
Right.
Like, she needs to learn it in English first. You know, that will come. The language will come. And I think just being open-minded, because there's so many other cultures, you know, that they can learn from and learn different things from. And I think just like doing traditional games, like, you know, la loteria, Mexican stuff, you know, Mexican games and stuff like that. And just being children.
Right.
I know. I think now with the whole tech era, we're just like, here's a tablet.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to, like,
Cocomelon.
limit. I hate Cocomelon.
So let's fast track it. You know, we got into the deep. Now let's get into the inspirational, right? We're not our past, and the future is bright for us as first gen. How did you get into establishing into real estate, and what was your education like? What was some of the pressures that you have from getting an education or going to school? You know, we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Well, where did you get to, and how did you get to where you are now? Because real estate is a cutthroat, but I mean, especially now in the era where you can't find any housing right now.
Right.
It's crazy.
Ridiculous. Yeah. So I want to like rewind. So when I was in high school, I've always had a thing to go to like something in the beauty industry or the fashion industry.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, you're ridiculous.
Why?
She's like, you're never going to make money from that.
We need money now.
And I'm just, so I got kind of discouraged, you know.
You're my retirement plan.
and I'm just like, oh, well. So I had to switch. I ended up switching my classes mid-year. I'm like, oh, I'll do accounting.
Shout out to all the accountants out there, honestly.
Like, no shame or anything, but like my passion was that. And they're like, no, that's ridiculous. And I wanted to go to a school in California. And they're like, nope, because who are you going to live out there? Like, no one's going to be paying your tuition. And And another struggle was, for me, that was like a slap in the face, which I'm sure a lot of other people can relate to, is the whole student loan process. I had no idea. No one in my family, at least my parents, they didn't graduate, much less high school.
Yeah. Or how to apply for college.
I didn't even know that process. I'm like, who do I even ask?
Right.
So you're so lost. I'm like, you're pretty much just like your parents because you're just as clueless in that aspect. I was like, I don't know. So when I hear all my peers in high school, they're like, oh, I'm going to UNH, and I'm going to UMass Lowell, and I'm going to Keene, and I'm just like, I don't have a plan. I don't know, because I don't know. I don't have anyone to go to or know.
But wait, didn't you contact your guidance counselor to kind of go through? Yeah, but
you're right.
Yeah.
But
I don't
that's
know.
another thing. Is like, what am I supposed to tell them? Oh yeah, my parents don't have status.
Yeah, my dad's going to pay for my tuition for the first year. He's got something established for a long time now. And I got my first account since I was 12. And I was like, great for you. It's crazy. I used to envy those kids that had it all together with their parents, like established something. Now I want that for my kids.
It's like, oh, my
kids
parents gave me a trust fund. I'm like, what's a trust fund? Like, so that to me was like the big slap in the face because I didn't know and I felt very stuck.
How did you push through?
I ended up taking a whole year off after high school.
That's okay too.
Because of the confusion. I didn't know what I wanted to do anymore. Like if I wanted to do something for myself or just go on with listening to my parents kind of thing.
Tiene que ir a la universidad, si no, un trabajo.
Yeah. You have to make us proud.
Yeah, you gotta.
That's another pressure.
Yeah, you gotta get a good job, or you gotta go to school. One or the other. You can't be lounging around here.
Yeah.
Jasmine's getting flashbacks right now. we all went through that talk. Mm-hmm. Scary.
Yeah.
And here we are, the pressure of life.
Right. Yep. And that's when I decided, I was like, I'll just go into banking. And I did banking for a very long time. Pretty much all my 20s up until recently.
What bank did you work at, if you don't mind asking?
I was like bouncing around. I was at Triangle, and then I was at DCU. But that's where I kind of learned. I was usually the only one that was bilingual.
Yeah.
And so
they put you right in the front.
And so
diversity and inclusion, everybody.
Right.
Come bank
one
first.
Person.
Poster child. Sí, hablamos español. Shout out to Triangle Credit Union.
Yes.
We're seeing you.
So, when I was in that role, I started off as a teller, and when I moved up to member services and helping people with their finances, when people tell me they're like, when they're not aware of just the basic personal finance because they don't know the language, they're signing documents that they don't understand. And to me, I'm like, wow, like they're taking advantage of right now. And that killed me to see my people like that. And I'm like, if it's going to take us an hour in my office, we're going to sit here and I'm going to work it through with you and educate you. I'm not going to do it for you.
Yeah.
But I'll educate you. I'm like, that's the least I can do. To help my people.
Right.
And they would leave my office so grateful.
Yeah.
Even something so simple like refinancing their car.
Yeah.
But they're saving so much more money now. I'm like, it's just the small things that they weren't taught.
It's like
But I'm sharing my knowledge with them.
But, it's no different than if you would have had a friend approach you from the same community and say, this is how we apply for college. Mm-hmm. And by the way, did you know that there's a specific grants for us to be able to go to college and get our tuition paid for because we're Hispanic?
Right. So for me, it's a small act of kindness to pay it forward because I didn't have it. Even though I'm a citizen, but it doesn't matter. I still didn't know because I didn't have the resources.
Right. All Latinos, first generation, say that. We have to give back. We have to give back. What we need to do is we need to come up with a system, an internal system, and bond together. Because if we come with an internal system and we bond together, We're running everybody out of all the positions, and we'll take over.
Yeah.
But I think that our community is afraid to acknowledge that because we've been let down for so long that we don't know where to turn or who to trust, right? And it's those individual relationships, like you did, with putting yourself in a position to being able, like, okay, she's at a credible bank. If they trust her, we trust her. It's crazy that
word of mouth goes a long way.
Exactly, the community. It's crazy that if the Caucasian community trusts you first from your connections within the Latin community, then the Latin community will trust you. And it should be completely different.
Right.
It should be the Latin community trusts you because you have that relationship, putting you in that position, and then now you're bridging the gap to the Caucasian community. Which is crazy. You're a realtor.
But
I've
learned a lot. I've had, and those people that I used to speak to and work with, I still they're my friends at this point.
Of course.
And I still check up on them, and they'll still call me, ask me questions. I'm like, well, I don't work there anymore. And they're like, yeah, but no one explains it like you do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, okay.
But these corporations will never understand that. That when we
or even
as
simple things. I used to get people complain to me. They're like, well, how come the ATM's not in Spanish?
There's a lot of things in. Let me tell you.
Like it's only in English. He's like, I don't know how to use something simple, the ATM. Yeah. He's like, I don't know how to use the ATM because it's in English. And I'm out there in the cold and outside in the ATM because it was outside. Like, I'm like, you do that. This is deposit. This is withdrawal.
But you didn't have to do that.
I didn't have to.
But you did. Because we do that for our people, right? It's not us to recognize what we do for our people. It's others to recognize to do that for our people. And if they're not going to put us in a position of power or to kind of elevate our own community, then they need to implement what we're doing and be able to, like, as simple as a translator.
Right.
Today at 2:00, right after the show, I have to go and be by somebody's side in the courthouse because they have a translator over the phone or they don't have enough translators at court. I had to translate for somebody.
I've listened to some of these translation lines and I'm like,
no,
that's not even the right
and
word.
We
I
ask,
didn't sing it right.
And we ask our people, we ask our community, hey, do you like it better to have a translator over the phone or person to person? No, person to person is better because we can feel the emotions. We feel like we have somebody in our side. We don't have just a monotone over the phone. Oh, comprende? Click. You know what I'm saying? What being a realtor, what are some things that you're setting up for your future for the next gen and what put you on that path?
So, I think when I was in banking and, like I said, since I was the only person that was bilingual, or one of very few, I was like, I want to help out my community. Yeah. There's so many things that can be accomplished, but they don't know where to start. And just as basic as housing, everybody needs housing.
Right.
Everyone. But nobody wants to be taken advantage of. And
there's 4,000 homeless children right now in the state alone. Half of that, 2,000, are in the southern part of New Hampshire. Yeah. There's no affordable housing.
No, everything's crazy expensive for sure. But just, I think, planting the seed and educating everyone on resources, even if it's like rental resources, last month or before Christmas, I helped a single mother and she had 3 children. She wasn't Spanish or anything. And she's like, I need to find somewhere to live. And I've been helping her since July. And she was getting denied the rental applications. Either her dog, because her dog, it was emotional support, so you can't discriminate against that. They wouldn't tell us. Obviously, they'll be sly about it. Or because she was on disability income. And I was like, I need to find her something. And I wasn't even going to get any money for it. But I did anyways. I exhausted all avenues. And, you know, I ended up going to like a personal person that I know. And I would feel so horribly bad because she's like, Jackie, if I can't find a place by end of December, she's like, I'm going to go homeless with my 3 children. And I put myself in her shoes, and I'm like, oh my God, like, I need help her. And maybe I get too connected, but that's just who I am. Like, I genuinely want to help.
Right.
And you know, and I did find her somewhere, and she's so happy. And I'm like, wow, like, I wish I could do this for everyone. But I can't do it by myself.
None of us can.
I can't, you know, we can't. But like you said, if we can come together, you know, it would be so powerful.
Absolutely.
And, you know, real estate is just the beginning for me. And I think if people would, like, come out of the shadows, like, I'd love to help them. Or a family member, or a friend, or whoever it is. Just understanding that, you know, what goes into it and educating them on the whole process.
And I mean, that's one of the fundamentals of obtaining the American dream, right? Having a home.
I just had so many people tell me, they're like, well, I signed this. And I'm like, well, do you understand it? They're like, no.
There goes your interest rate.
Or even just an offer on a house. Like, there's a lot of things that go into that. I'm not a lawyer. So I'm like, I can advise you in a way, but I can't go to that extent legally. I'm like, you need a consultant. But then again, that's another issue. I'm like, well, and then I'm like, damn, I'm scrambling for some a lawyer, real estate lawyer here that's bilingual. Another thing. And then I'm like, oh, I have contacts for mortgages. They're like, oh, well, do they speak Spanish? I'm like, now I gotta find someone else. Like, I always have to find that connection in different industries that speak the language to help. Because I can't translate for everyone.
What's a message for a first-gen American that's listening right now and that is looking for that sense of hope or inspiration?
I think it would just be, if you want to do something, do it. Sometimes you just have to be strong enough to do it with no support. Because a lot of times our parents aren't going to support us
They're too afraid.
on what we want to do. And just having, and if you do need that support, just finding the right people to support you. Because that turmoils into the mental health if you don't do it.
And if
you're just going to suppress it.
And if you're battling with mental health, please seek help.
Yes.
Talk to somebody. Don't go through it alone.
No.
Because just a simple conversation can change the whole trajectory of your mentality and the way you think and maybe your day. And you just got to take it day by day and not suppress those thoughts and that anxiety. And it's individuals like you that found a way to get inspired and re-inspire our community, which is important. Ladies and gentlemen, good times go fast, huh?
Yeah.
Jackie Figueroa, ladies and gentlemen, realtor. Plug in your information if anybody's looking for a house or if they need help.
Of course. Yes. So you can find me. My brokerage is American Eagle Realty. I do live here in Nashua. Feel free to give me a call. My cell phone number is 603-932-6860. Or email me at jackie@americaneaglere.com.
Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for
you.
sharing your wonderful story. And God bless.
you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to all of our sponsors, Boomer Graphics and Signs, Ribera Nayarit, and Zapopan. And to all our listeners, thank you so much. Like and share and follow us on YouTube as well. And if you have any questions about all of our shows or any of our shows or consulting, www.fgmshows.com.
WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Listen, watch, and stream at WSMN.live.
USA Radio News with Tim Berg.
A new government report finds drug overdoses are costing the United States economy $1 trillion per year. The U.S. Commission on Combating Synthetic